Even if you live to be 193, what is 193 years compared to 193 trillion years? It's a vapor. But what kind of man, who can raise their self from the dead? I mean, I often ask, well, why didn't God have the, disciples raise him from the dead? Could the disciples have risen Jesus from the dead? Yes, because in Matthew chapter 10, verse 8, he told them, go, cleanse the lepers, heal the sick, raise the dead. They could have done it, but see, God chose to have him do it because what it did was, when Jesus raised himself from the dead, he proved who he said he was. Jesus, listen guys, seriously, Jesus said, in essence, I am who? God. That's why we have this. He's not just a man. He is God. But it's not mouthing off that he's God. He's proven that he's God. Who else do you know died and raised himself from the dead? Who does even history tell us raised himself from the dead? Jesus did. The only person that can raise himself from the dead would be a man who is fully God and fully man. And in his dying for the sin of mankind and raising himself from the dead, Jesus proves that his love is infinite. His death proves that his love is infinite. I said to you earlier, if I died for you, you think you might give me a little bit of play? Might give me a little bit of credence? You at least read my last will and testament, would you? Would you get it? I'm going to give my life for Kenny. Kenny, all I want you to do is read my last will and testament. How many of you said, well, I don't know. No, you'd be anxious to do it. The kind of man that raises himself from the dead is a God man. The one who, see, I saw it this way. Wow. Jesus, in essence, now we're making some tall claims, I know that. But history proves that we're right. Jesus raised himself from the dead, ready? While he was dead. No, as we say in our ethnicity, palva. Not power, palva. P-O-V-A. P-O-W-V-A. Palva. Think about this, guys. You are dead, and you have the power, while you're dead, to raise yourself from the dead. You gonna get in the ring with that kind of guy? You're gonna challenge him on anything intellectually, physically? You can't. But he's not sitting up there pounding his chest to say, I can beat you at anything. He says, I love you. That's why I died for you. I raised from the dead to prove who I was. In fact, in Acts chapter 2, you don't have to turn there, but you can write this down for your notes. In Acts chapter 2, verse 24, when Peter, after Jesus had died, was resurrected on the day of Pentecost, 50 days after the Passover, Peter's preaching this great sermon. And he said, let me tell you something about Jesus of Nazareth. You Jews, at that time, you delivered him over to Pilate and had him crucified and killed. And God loosed the pains of death from Jesus because it was not even possible that death could hold him. Jesus had to let death take it. People think, oh, that must have been really hard for Jesus to raise himself from the dead. Jesus was not in paradise saying, I wonder how I'm going to do this. Wow, that's going to take a lot of power. No, I'm going to argue the harder thing was for Jesus to stay on that cross. Raising from the dead was simple to Jesus. Why again? He created death. I guess if I create you, I have more power than you, don't I? But what was hard is when those people were trying to challenge him, if you're really the Messiah, come down off the cross. That's why God didn't choose me to be the Messiah, Asia, because I would have came off. I was like, okay, you want to see something? Watch this. I would have taken the spikes out of the wrist and out of the feet and go on the ground, and then I would have stood up over and said, now what you got to say? But then I wouldn't have beaten my task. See, that would have just been the flesh, me just showing off. But there was no problem for Jesus raising himself from the dead. The Bible says it was not possible that he could be held by it. Let me dispel a couple of myths, though, about this idea of resurrection. I like to do this. This is my favorite part of preaching on Resurrection Sunday. In fact, it is the myths and the arguments against the resurrection that confirm to me more so the reality of it. I'm going to just give you just a few of the myths about Christ being raised from the dead. How many of you saw this movie years ago? If you're under 30, you couldn't have seen it. a movie called The Passover Plot. Anybody ever heard of the movie The Passover Plot? Y'all, thank you, Hope. Give me 5. I saw it at the Beverly Theater over there in Beverly Hills, The Passover Plot. In The Passover Plot, here was the argument. Well, he wasn't really dead. Yeah, right, he really wasn't dead. Did you see the movie? That movie was very close to what really happened. You know, maybe, and here's what the argument was. Well, you know, they took his body off of the tomb, and in the cool of the evening, as he reposed, he revived. Okay, maybe he could revive from the wrist, wounds, possibly. Maybe he could bandage up, the head wound. The feet wound, that spear in the side, hitting you in the pericardium and blood and water coming out, you are very dead. That's a myth. The second myth, well, his disciples went to the wrong tomb. You ever heard that one? Jesus had a lot of people that were his opponents. And if his disciples had claimed that they went to the tomb and it was empty, and the Jews knew that they went to the wrong tomb, guess what they would have done? Keith, would you play along with me? Right, just come up for a minute. Play along with me. Keith is one of the disciples and I'm one of the Jews. You went to the wrong tomb. Here it is up here. There it is. What happens after that? And they see the body. Thank you. The case is closed. That's silly. Why such a weak argument? They went to the wrong tomb. Okay, well then go to the right one. I mean, if he's really not dead, if he's still dead and he's not resurrected, wouldn't it have been easy for him at some point, at least within 2,000 years, to find the right tomb? And here's really a funny one. His disciples stole his body. You know those real brave disciples that hung around during the time of his crucifixion? You know that brave guy, Peter, who went and, the girl says, oh, you're one of them. He said, yeah, I'm one of them. What you got to say about it? No, he didn't do that. He denied Christ 3 times, and yet that same Peter becomes a powerful preacher of the gospel because he knew that Jesus had raised from the dead. Those guys would have never even attempted to break a Roman seal, because if you break a Roman seal, guess what happens to you? They will take you and they will kill you quick. And you don't lose prisoners. Guards didn't lose prisoners in those days. If you lost a prisoner, guess what they would do? They'd take all of the clothing of all the guards, put them all on you, and burn you with the clothes. And then here's the other one. Matthew 28, 11 through 15. In fact, this is what convinces me that this was a lie. Because the religious leaders of Jesus' time paid the guard. Do you used to have to pay people to tell the truth? Do you bribe people to tell the truth? When you're giving a person a bribe, what are you usually doing? You're bribing them to say something that's not true. In Matthew 28, in fact, it says that whole argument was there even at that point when Matthew was written, that the disciples stole the body. Here's the last one. Here's a real funny one. Don't raise your hand. Just raise your hand on the inside. Ever do drugs sometime in your life? Like I said, don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Ever did any hallucinogens? Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Ever had a hallucination? I remember I was taking this drug. I wasn't doing good. This is Vicodin. Ever take Vicodin? They said, you may have some strange occurrences. Man, I kid you not. I had taken some Vicodin. I had my appendix ruptured. I took some Vicodin. I was laying on, remember, honey, I was laying in the, we used to have a big family room. I was laying in that family room floor, Richard, and I was asleep. And I was dreaming that I was looking over my body. It wasn't an out-of-the-body experience. It was an hallucination. I never really came out of my body. But can you imagine if you've ever had a hallucination? Hey, did you ever do some drugs with someone else? Don't answer, don't answer. But when you did you all have the same hallucination? Do you know what the statistical probability is of everybody having the same hallucination? How about the 500 people that saw Jesus that Timothy talked about? The 500 people that saw the resurrected Christ all at one time were all having the hallucination. Come on, give me a break. Now, Pastor, you're getting a little deep now. You're getting a little heavy. Why do we want to play? Not so much again. Why do people want to play with this? What do you think about people who play Russian roulette? And a lot of times they don't. But, y'all know what Russian roulette is. You take a bullet and you put it in and you spin it. And then you put it to your temple to see if people don't realize that that's what most people are doing with their lives every day. because they don't know when their life is going to end. And just like the song, they're saying, tomorrow, right? I'll give my life tomorrow. Who said tomorrow will never come? I don't get it.
That's right.
What's in the contract that says you'll get here tomorrow? Now, I will be honest with you. The vast majority of the people in this room, most likely all of us, will be here tomorrow. But who's willing to bet their eternity on that? I don't like to use the worldly term, but that's what you're doing when you don't know Christ. And let me say the positive. When you do know Christ, life in that context, not in every context. Listen to me. Imagine having a life where you never have to worry about death. What does that sound like? It sounds like heaven. But you can have a little bit of taste of heaven right here when you know where you're headed. Right?
Yes.
And people live their lives, their whole lives, on a plane and a train, that they have no idea where they're going. What would you think about the person? Let's say you got a friend, and they said, the airline said, we won some tickets. Laura won some tickets on the job. So the airline says, well, okay, we're going to give you these tickets, and we're going to let you get on our plane and fly. And so we say, okay, we're going to take that flight. And so they say, you say to us, where y'all going? We don't know. They just said fly. How many of you would get on that plane? What do you want to know when you get on the plane? Well, the first thing I want to know is the plane okay. This is what Pastor does when he gets on the plane. I lay hands on the plane. I'm sorry. I know the reason thing not. I always do this before the plane. I say, yeah, thank you, Lord, angels. Them planes are pretty big, you know. You ever see the 747? It's like, I don't see how they can get things moved down the runway. They don't get up off the air. Right? But you wouldn't get on a plane and you didn't know the destination. Why do you live your life and you don't know what your destination is? Why are you going to live your life? Well, I just hope God will let me in. I'm telling you right now, if you don't know Christ, he's not going to let you in. Case closed in the story. Well, you want to bet? Yeah, you want to bet? Because I always have to say this. What if we're wrong about this idea about Jesus being the only way? What if it's really what the people of the world say, that when you're dead, you're gone? I mean, that's always a possibility. Did you guys know that? Everybody's quiet. Sure, it's a possibility. Well, what if we're wrong? Me and my buddy Larry, the one who says eternity is too long to be wrong, we're having that very conversation. What if we're wrong and we just end up into a state of oblivion? Are you going to care? I'm not going to care. In fact, I won't have any problems. Can you have problems when you don't know anything? Anybody ever had surgery? They put you under. What do? They have you count backwards from 100. How many of you ever got to 95? 99. This is what I remember. 99. 98. Charlton, wake up. When you get put under, it seems like you've only been under like a minute. I had been under for 7 hours. And that wasn't not quite 7, 4 or 5 hours. In that 4 or 5 hours, they could have cut off my head illusion me and taken it to San Francisco and kicked it through the field goal at the Giants Stadium, at the 49ers Stadium, and brought it back and put it on. I wouldn't have known anything about it. That's oblivion. So if that's what we get when we die, just a state of nothingness, you have no problems, I have no problems. But if we're right about what you saw, about a place where you will be conscious, tell your friends you will be conscious. And I was wondering, is this too much? No, it ain't too much because it's too real. And if someone was offended, please don't be. It's not like you're just trying to scare us. No. When your doctor says, you need to stop smoking, is he trying to scare you? When the doctor says, you need to put the sugar down, the salt, is he trying to scare you? No, he's trying to keep you well. That's all we're doing. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to close with this because I love this verse. I'll just quote it. You read it when you get home. First of all, 1 Corinthians 15:3, the reason what this means to us, Paul, when he writes this letter to the Corinthian church, and it's the first letter that they have chronologically written in the New Testament, he says, I wrote unto you, third verse of first importance, that Jesus Christ came and died according to the Scriptures and was raised the third day according to the Scriptures. This is of first importance. In fact, he says later on, he says in the 14th and the 16th verse, if there's no resurrection, then our preaching is what? Worthless, vain, worthless. Our faith is worthless and vain. If there's no resurrection, stop being a Christian.